Hey everybody, welcome back to another Dice Tower review. My name is Zee Garcia.
And I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Bureau of Investigation here, Investigations in Arkham and Elsewhere. This is based on the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective system of games, in which you are given some materials, a map, a book, a phone directory sometimes, and given a case that you have to solve. You'll go talk to various people, look at various things, follow some leads, and ultimately try to solve the whodunit, what happened. This one's a little bit different because it's, well, based on Cthulhu and that mythos. So it's a little more nebulous. It's less cut and dry of like so-and-so did it with the wrench in the kitchen. It's sort of, unknowable, unfathomable sometimes. But it's based on that same idea with a little bit more, I guess the mechanisms here are a little more robust, a little more cut and dry, okay? So let's go ahead and give you an overview. Camilla's going to show you how the game works in a very sort of, high-level way because we don't want to spoil anything, right? So we'll go ahead and show you that. We'll be right back with some final thoughts. Here we go.
All right, so in this overview, I am not going to go into real details or show a whole lot of the game. We're going to go over the components briefly and hopefully help you get an idea of the flow of the game, but I do want to avoid spoilers and be respectful of that. So let's dive in. First of all, you are going to get a rule book, which is pretty skimpy, but that's okay because I really think that the case books are where you're going to find most of the information. Speaking of which, you're going to have 5 different case books, one for each of the cases, and then you're going to have a bunch of supplemental materials. Let's get to that here in just a second. When you open up the case book, it's going to give you a brief introduction of the scenario and then direct you to the different things that you're going to need from these supplemental materials. So 2 pieces of information you glean from this, of course, the background story, kind of letting you know what you're looking for and trying to do. It's going to give you some sort of time period. So here in this first one, for example, you have 15 days. We'll come back to that in a minute, but that is kind of your ticking time that you have in order to gather information. And then at the very end, it's going to tell you in a different color here the things that you'll need. So for example, in the first scenario, you're going to need the booklet, Arkham map directory, and an issue of the Arkham advisor. So advertiser, I'm sorry. So you would go through, you would grab those things, and you would put everything else to the side because it would be used in a different scenario. As you're going through and investigating people and gathering information, that's where you're going to really use this Massachusetts directory. So for example, if you wanted to talk to Thomas Caldwell, for example, this is maybe somebody that you gleaned from the situation here, then you would look up his number here, 14SE, and you would come over here into your casebook and you need to decide, do you want to interview him or investigate? So interview is where you're talking to that person directly and kind of asking them questions about situations, trying to get information. Investigation is typically where you're looking at a location or you're tailing somebody specifically. So these are 2 separate actions and you do need to decide which one you would want to do. So for example, he was, again, I believe 14 SE. You would come here to the SE, the southeast, and see, does it have an entry? If it doesn't have an entry, for example, in this one, it does not take your time away. If it does, you would want to annotate that, and that's going to take one of these days, for example, or one of these actions that you have. So whether it's action, days, minutes, hours, whatever the time it gives you here, it's this number that counts. You have 15. Pretty much you can do 15 actions before you have to make your conclusion. So you keep going here, gathering this information, keeping track of the different locations that you go, whether it be from interviews or investigations. Once you're done with that, you need to choose 3 of them that you think are important to the solution of this case. It might be specific people or locations, but you're going to choose 3 of them and then turn to the back of the casebook and see if those locations are in there. These are upside down to avoid spoilers. If they are in there, you're going to read that entry, and that entry is going to give you some sort of points, award you some points. If that is not in there, then you don't get any points, and you just lose out on that opportunity. After you look at all 3 of the locations that you had chosen, and you see if you got points of them, you tally your points, and then you're going to go back to the rule book to see how you did based on their point chart here. So that's a very, very broad overview of it. Again, trying to avoid spoilers, but let's go back up top to see how we thought it went.
All right, so starting with the comparison to Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, I'd like to jump in there. I'm not really a big fan of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and I'll say right away that I like this more than that because I find this to be a stronger, mechanically, a stronger system. In Sherlock Holmes, you're sort of given free rein to do whatever you want. You can stop whenever you want to. You can just sort of keep poking at any old entry, any old thing until you go 2 hours later. I think I got it. I don't know. And then you read what happened, the final entry. In this one, you're given a specific number of days or basically time units. They're like, okay, you have 12 whatevers to do the thing we want you to do. And then every time you go somewhere, either you investigate a place or a person, that counts as one. So it will end at a specific time. I really like that. I think it's a lot more, just game-like. It's a lot stronger. It's a lot more specific than the older games. I do like the duality, and I think you'll agree with me here, between talking to someone and investigating a place. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, do we want to interview or follow or tag or break into or whatever? So it's sort of a binary choice at every location. And then you'll look that up in the book, and if there is an entry for it, bam, that counts one of your time units, and you read that passage. Those passages, I think, are pretty good. I think they're pretty well written.
Yeah, I'd agree. I really like the writing in it. I think that it doesn't end up overstaying its welcome.
Right.
It's rich enough that you feel involved and invested in the story, but it doesn't overstay its welcome either. You're not having pages and pages of reading. It's a couple paragraphs, gets to the point, gives you a little bit of flavor, and then you move on. And I like that. I think it really hit a sweet spot there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the writing is good. It does keep you on the hook for the most part, and it gives you that whole, oh, wait, let me write this down. Oh, where did they say they lived on the map? And where's this other place? Oh, how did they get from here to here? So it gives you enough to get invested. And I have to say, I think it does a good job of making you feel like an investigator.
It does, yeah.
It puts you in that setting. It puts you in its world well enough. Does it make some leaps in logic? Yeah. And one of the dings against it is because you can do anything and go anywhere in any order, you will sometimes have that issue where you start reading an entry and you go, wait, I feel like I shouldn't be here yet. It has that feeling of, why is this person talking to me with this tone? I don't know them yet. I haven't talked to this other, person or been in this other place yet. So I think sometimes you have to be careful that you, I guess, don't do things in the order that the game doesn't want you to do them. You know what I mean?
And sometimes that leads to that feeling of, you have to make those leaps in logic as well, where you're like, okay, I'm assuming that this person is this person over here from this picture. And then later when you figure out I saw it in the wrong order, or, oh wait, that was a red herring. And I think that's the one thing with the story that kind of dinged for me, is there's a lot of red herrings in it, which I'm fine with. I mean, that's part of being an investigator, right? And working through it. But you're having to make those leaps in logic, which ends up just feeling lucky sometimes. If you luck into, yes, I made the right choice, that was a red herring, or no, that was significant, and therefore I'm choosing that number for my end game.
Yeah, and it's definitely, you can go very, very awry if you pick the wrong thing. So let's go ahead and jump to the end, because I think everything we're saying so far sounds very good. And like many of these games, I'll say it right now, the journey is fun. The destination then just kicks me in the teeth. Yeah. And this happens a lot with these kinds of games. This is another one that, unfortunately, I felt that way when you get to the destination. Once you're out of your time units, they're like, okay, pick 3 places, visit those places. You might just whiff. I mean, you might just be completely off. And then the game, you read entries for what those 3 places you chose to go to are, and they just sometimes make no sense. Right. If you start reading, you go, who? What? Wait. I never met that oh, I forgot to go to the so-and-so. Or I never followed this path down. I guess I should have, because I messed up. And I've got like 2 points. Great. So I think that's the biggest flaw in the game, unfortunately. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know, again, it's unfortunate, but that feeling of having played for a while and then just you didn't pick the right, there's A, B, C, and D, and you didn't pick C, it should have been C, you dummy. that just feels bad.
Or even terrible to get to the end and you didn't get any of them.
Right.
You know, the 3 you picked aren't on there at all. And so you're like, wait, okay, so then I guess I'll just read all these entries and try to maybe piece together what happened.
Yeah.
But you don't have the background for it. It's very lackluster, I think was my word for it. You know, by the time you get there, it's like, oh, all right. Cool. I was nowhere near the right answer. You know, it just doesn't feel good, like you said.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're not good at doing these things, you know.
Right,
So that was my biggest weakness, I would say. I liked the setting a lot. I like the writing a lot. I think it's cool to have a game of this style set in this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you get, 5 cases, I think it is, which is...
I believe so.
Which is nice. You know, it's a good amount. They are not replayable. Once you've played once, you're done. You can hand this off to someone else, but you're done. So that's good. But yeah, unfortunately, it suffers from that thing that a lot of these games suffer from, and that is it's hard to always know what you should do, and if you don't, you just feel like a big old dummy at the end when they're reading a passage and you're going, I don't know what you're referencing. I never saw that. So, final thoughts. What are you going to come down on this one?
Yeah, so final thoughts. I'm going to come down to 6 on this one. And most of that comes from just the enjoyment, like you talked about, the journey. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the setting. I mean, doing it, there's some funny moments. There's some interesting moments. You're like, oh, what's going to happen next? And you really get invested and want to find out. And that's a lot of fun. But then it does really suck to get to the end and be like, well, that was a lot of fun. That went nowhere. I enjoyed it. But that was the red herring. And, you know, unfortunately, I think that happens more often than not in this game. I feel like had it been the one-off, that's fine. The next case kind of saves it, but that's not what I found.
Sure.
More often than not, of those 3 choices you get at the end, you hope one of them is right. You know, I did have one case that worked out really, really well, you know, and that was... The problem is it still felt lackluster, you know, because it's like we did really well and got all 3 of them had an entry for it. And that was great. But then the end story was like, oh, but that's not why I thought, you know? So even when you do well, you still feel like you still feel stupid, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
You know, you still feel a little bit like, okay, well, cool. There's no way I could have put that together. You know? And
I don't know if I would agree with that there's no way you could have put that together. Like, I mean... We made some wrong choices, I guess. You know what I mean? We should have gone a different way. I agree that it does make you feel dumb, but I feel like these games are popular, and I often feel dumb playing them. So maybe it's a me problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly you are dumb. Yeah.
I think so. I think that's what it is. I'm gonna give this game the benefit of the doubt because again, it's so person specific. It's so dependent on the player being a good player. That's kind of what the game requires almost of the players. You know what I mean?
Or it requires you to make those leap and logics, and I feel like I may be too conservative for that. It's too... I have a hard time being like, all right, I'm going to confidently jump to this.
Sure. That could be it. Also, everything that it does right and that journey, if you're someone who is really going to enjoy that journey, the reading, the investigating, the tailing people, and being, you know, stroking the beard and going, yes. Even if you're let down by the end and you not quite getting that right, I think I'm less forgiving of that than I suspect a lot of people are. My point being, I'm going to squeak this one into a 7, okay? I think it is well put together. I like the world building here. I like the materials they give you. I love the restraint shown from previous Sherlock Holmes games to this. I like that. It's a map and a directory and the book of entries. That's it. Pick a place. It's so easy to do. I like that too. You know, like, where are we going? How about we visit this guy? Where does he live? 12 ELS. Yeah. Bam. Like, we're there. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't have to, like, figure out, like, well, how do we get there? Wait, how do I do... I like that simplicity. Yes, the game makes me feel like a dummy at the end. Yes, I was, you know, not good at sort of piecing it together. And I will say that even if and we did one that we did very well in, it still feels lackluster at the end a little bit when you like, even if you get some points, you're like, all right, guess we did our job. You know, it's not super satisfactory. But the journey's fun.
It is. And there's definitely moments that I still look back on, I remember that when that happened in that story. So
Yeah.
it does leave a good memory.
Yeah.
And so there is that to say for it.
If you're someone who enjoys reading Cthulhu, or you like those games, the Cthulhu Mythos types games, if you're not too hung up on the ending here, I think you'll like this. I think this will be a fun one to sit around with some folks, read, investigate some things. Just be ready for maybe the endings to leave you a little wanting, okay? Absolutely. So yeah, I'm sneaking it into a 7. That is a seal of approval for me. I think some folks out there are going to dig on this one. So there you go. That's it, folks, for Bureau of Investigation, Investigators in Arkham and Elsewhere. Thanks very much for checking this one out with us. My name is Zee Garcia.
I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
Watch out for the Cthulhu and the Shoggoths and then the little creepy guys who fly. That guy. Watch out for that guy.
Be careful.